Elevate your game development with Heroic Labs, the cutting-edge platform for building multiplayer games. And you need an edge to be successful in today's gaming landscape. Their scalable Nakama server empowers you to create compelling, real-time multiplayer experiences effortlessly. Benefit from features like in-game chat, leaderboards, matchmaking, and more, all designed to enhance engagement and retention. Whether you're developing for mobile, console, or PC, Heroic Labs gives you the tools to bring your community together. Unleash the full potential of your game with Heroic Labs, where every developer is a hero.
This podcast is brought to you by Sensor Tower. Sensor Tower has acquired mobile analytics company Data AI, formerly known as We All Know and Love App Annie. 4 things you should know. Significant advancement, number 1. This acquisition represents a major step forward for Sensor Tower. It expands its customer base, mobile marketing, and app intelligence products, and global presence. Number 2, undisputed leadership position. Sensor Tower strengthened its position as the leader in digital marketing and mobile app intelligence through this acquisition. Number 3, combined insights. This merger with Data AI allows Sensor Tower to offer customers even stronger and more detailed insights on the digital customer journey. And last, consumer trends. With increasing time spent on digital channels, the combined company is well positioned to capitalize on the growing trend of in-app purchases driven by platforms like Google, Meta, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and Snap. Exciting times lie ahead for Sensor Tower and Data AI as they join forces. If you're a customer, reach out to your account director for more information. Not a customer yet? No problem. Schedule a call to explore the innovative digital marketing products they offer. Go to Data AI or sensortower.com and get on board with undeniably the best data partner in the business. Welcome to This Week in Games 295, where we read and distill all of the weekly game industry news so you don't have to. Here's what we got today. Professor of Economics, Kress, will give his thoughts on the one-day recession that hit last week.
Oh,
he
Lord.
wasn't here, so get ready for a deep economic lesson, everyone. We're going to weigh in more on what happened at Bungie with the recent layoffs, a little bit more inside baseball, kind of dissecting what happened there. And then lots of earnings reports are out. We're going to talk a little bit about Nexon and Take-Two. I'm bummed that Krafton just came in because they crushed it. So maybe next week we talk a little bit more about Krafton, especially because they did the Hi-Fi Rush, Tango Gameworks. They purchased them from Microsoft. So that might have to hit next week. I also, Kress, imagine we're going to fight over Transmedia since Borderlands was a bomb of a movie.
Transmedia is over, dude.
No.
Halo bombed.
No.
And Borderlands bombed. What a shitty strategy from the get-go. Seriously.
No, it's, remember we rebranded it. It's franchise. Franchises are important. They completely bombed this one. I wish I had a better Borderlands analogy. I played it so long ago. I don't know any words to make something cute out of that. Okay, anyway, hi, I'm Jen Donahoe, strategic marketing consultant at Beta Hat and Jade Inferno. And today there's only 3 of us. Eric Kress, principal at Gossamer Consulting Group. Say hi.
Yo! Sorry.
He's fucking playing WoW right now, everybody.
He is playing WoW right now.
Is not
Dude,
paying attention
I'm
to
I'm leveling up my 8th character to level 70 like a fucking crack addict for no particular reason. This game has got me by the short hairs, as they say. I don't know what to do with myself. So I will stop playing and get through this podcast, I promise.
Well, thank you for that, for your 1 hour of attention. Laura Taranto, Senior Director of Product at Big Fish.
Hey.
And our friends Mishka and Phil are off at some sort of play venture. I don't know. They're hanging out in Finland somewhere.
Hiking and saunaing and enjoying nature.
Yeah, who knows? All right. So, Kress, I think you've been going all around the country on college tours. What's going on?
Oh, yeah. I was just out with my daughter as a senior next year, and so we are looking at schools. Sad for us is that she wants to get as far away from us as freaking possible. So we're looking all at East Coast schools. But it was really fun. I mean, I haven't seen some of the schools, so that was kind of a nice thing to do for, a week at least. And then we're going to go back probably and do it later. We looked at we were Pennsylvania, University of Pennsylvania, Haverford, NYU, Columbia, Northwestern. She just basically really wants to go to a big city. That's where she wants to be. My wife went to Penn, so that's our big hope. But I think NYU, she's really keen on that. So I don't know. It was cool. Very fun. Good to hang out with my daughter.
I would highly recommend WashU, although it's in St. Louis, which is not a big city. A really good friend of mine went to Penn and loved it, although it's not in the safest of places. And Laura, I am sad to say that WashU is actually not in Seattle.
I know. I was like, is that in Seattle? Seattle's not a big city.
Oh, that's true. She wants to go east. She wants weather. All right. That's fine.
Yeah, she'll see. She'll come right back to San Francisco because
the
weather's going to kill her.
My stepson is doing the kind of community college, local college. I'm going to knock out my credits and do the transfer thing. So he just graduated high school. I feel so old. Oh, and my wife had to update his RAM on his computer because he is now playing Valorant. Well, he's playing Fortnite and Valorant. So he's graduated from just a Fortnite. He used to play on his iPad with the claw, and now he's a PC gamer. So it's kind of fun to see the evolution of what a Gen A to a Gen Z gamer is these days. All right, a few shills. I had the pleasure of attending 2 amazing LA gaming events. The first was with a group of folks at EA, great mix of women and allies. It was organized by the lovely Lupe, who is one of the chairs of their kind of women's ERG group. It's just great to see that companies support, like, hey, bring in speakers and do these things. The second was another kind of female-focused event, Female Leaders in Gaming, organized by friend of the pod, Grace. I didn't know if I was even going to shill the event sponsor, but I am, because AWS, I didn't know this, that they give startups like varying degrees of credits if you work with them. So depending on how big you are, you can use almost all of their services basically for free in the beginning. So who knew? Good job, AWS. So thanks for supporting startups. So next, if you are a longtime fan of the pod, Adam Telfer is back, and he's going to be interviewing Newzoo. They have their new global game market report that's going to be out maybe this week, next week. It's in review. And so he's going to pop in and out of podcasts here and there. So it's nice to have him back. I actually have never been on a pod with him, so I'm excited. Laura, you're excited.
Oh, he's the smart one, and he's actually does the work. So it's good to have him back.
First of all, I also do the work.
Oh, I certainly don't.
I know. All right. Speaking of work, and all jumping into one, I don't know if this is a correction, but last episode we had a little bit of a back and forth debate on whether House of the Dragons was better or Game of Thrones was better. I believe it was 3-1 for House of Dragons, and I was the one who said Game of Thrones. And then I think our listeners would like there to be some acknowledgement of the art form that was Game of Thrones and how it potentially is better in terms of probably a narrative and kind of the character arcs and development, even though there's less dragons, than House of the Dragon. So
they're both great.
I think they're both great. I think, Game of Thrones was a lot slower, but I kind of like that. But that's a tough one. They're great. Both of them are great.
Yeah.
There's one more. We believe Phil might owe a correction on the Canadian medal count. and Mishka is no longer allowed in Canada after saying that I think he did not enjoy the coffee from Tim Hortons. I can't remember exactly what he said. I think it was something like very average or
I think he shit on it, and
trying to be nice.
I've been to Canada many times, and the Canadians they're such lovely people. They don't get upset except if you mess with their coffee and their Timmy Hortons, which is what he did. So I was like, Mishka, please don't get us canceled in Canada. So if you're a Canadian listener, please forgive us. The views expressed by Mishka do not reflect ours. Okay.
Dude, we don't need Canada. Come on, let's be real. All right.
To you.
Speaking of Mishka, right? I'm a bit torn here because I get feedback on both ways on this. They don't like when I generally bag on other hosts, particularly live. And the fact that he's not here is kind of a bad look. On the other hand, I got 3 or 4 people that said, dude, what the fuck is Miska doing talking about macroeconomic bullshit, right? Like, so I think we got to do a quick correction here, because the Japan market correction was basically a flash in the pan. You know, Miska was claiming that it was recession fears, inflation problems, tariffs, war, interest rate increase, struggling economy, stagflation, blah, 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 blah. Like, he was just like this, like, absolute diatribe of found words from, I don't know, the internet or something. And that resulted in the collapse of the stock market, and that we should expect stagflation until 2032. That was like his expectations, you know? And while some of those things may be true, that what's going on, I imagine you could say that about any time in history that this stuff is going on. So the reality of it is Japan had a unexpected raise in interest rates, which led to an insane appreciation in the yen. And then it was also disrupted by some technical trading that led to a massive sell-off of equities, and that also impacted the US, which also exacerbated by automated trading in the US. The market was down like 18% in Japan, right? But now it's back up. So it's only about down like 2% versus where it was before the interest rate hikes. So actually, and that's a reasonable move given a surprise and change in interest rates. So there's no need to freaking panic every time there's a sell-off in the market, right? Markets are fucking volatile by nature, okay? And some of these automated trading systems can actually exacerbate these challenges, right? And so, like, don't fucking panic, right? Calm the fuck down. You can't predict doom and gloom based on one day in the market. And we've had a lot worse things go on in the market, and we're still cranking. All right. So that's kind of all I really wanted to say on this. I think Miska's got to like pull it together. You know, Joseph Kim used to do this all the time. Like, there was like one thing that happened in the market, and then all of a sudden, like, the world is coming to an end. You know, it's like, it's not the way the world works. Sorry.
Thank you, Professor. Listen, this is not my area of expertise, but I didn't have enough to really get into it with Mishka on the pod, because he kind of threw that in last minute. So I went and actually did a little bit of research on what happened, and I listened to an entire podcast on yen carry trade, which is basically, you know, the challenge that happened in Japan. It's an hour of my life I can never get back, but it's basically how rich people and the mega rich people use and abuse the Japanese yen to, you know, basically make more money. So after hearing that deep dive and hearing about like all of the automatic issues that happened, totally agree with you, Kress, that there was no reason to freak out. In fact, it all like popped back up just a few days later. So yeah, thank you for the clarification and correction. All right, so headlines. Lots going on. So I wanted to first kick it off with Monopoly talk, and it's not the typical Monopoly Go talk that we have. It's about Google. So Google can't pass go, as its hand is slapped by a US judge that has finally ruled that Google search is a monopoly in search. So as a reminder, Google is paying folks like Apple $20 billion to be the default search, which a judge has deemed that stifled competition. No news on the remedy yet, and likely no immediate impact for the games industry. But from a tech perspective, this is pretty momentous. This is kind of calls back to what happened with Microsoft and Internet Explorer and Netscape back in the day 20 years ago. By the way, this came up in a previous administration and is now being, you know, took 4 years to get to this moment. It's going to take forever. But so that's Google. And then on the other side with Apple, and who knows how that's going to, you know, impact Apple, they have revamped its EU business terms for link outs. So this is as a result of the DMA. And I'm not even going to attempt to go into any detail on this because it's incredibly confusing. But the gist is that there is basically like two different fee structures that they're setting up. And there's a 5% initial acquisition fee and the store services fee, which is anywhere from 5 to 10%, versus the flat fee that was 17%. See, already I can't even explain it. Like it's a train wreck. So in any event, super confusing. But again, let's wait and see. And they'll likely be sued again by the EU. And they're still trying to figure out how they can work on the link outs. If you're interested, there's a ton of articles that go into vast detail, but just giving that heads up.
this will all get worked out, but they still have these insane like error messages every time you link out to other sites for download. So it's like, it's still not a tenable situation for third parties that want to build outside of Apple ecosystem. So,
and it's only in the EU, just to stress that as well.
yeah, correct.
All right.
Correct.
Did you see that Patreon is now there was like an article, maybe Seifert posted it, that they're being forced to migrate over to the in-app purchase system and then be subject to the 30% fee? Yeah. Okay. You saw
Yeah,
that.
I saw the headline. I
wow.
didn't read the article, but there are a lot of these kinds of tidbits of news coming out. People that had been avoiding the 30% kind of fees that are now being hit with it. I think
Yeah.
also it's impacting some of the social media platforms as well on some of the advertising that's happening. I mean, if Apple gets cut in one place or Google gets cut in one place, they're looking to make it up someplace else. So
Yep.
we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. The global marketing reports are out from two big companies. Well, one is not a big company. One is Newzoo, who do a great job on all of their free reports, and they often cover the entire industry, mobile, console, PC. And then Yoast, who we talk about all the time, who has a great newsletter. He has a new company called Aldora, Aldora. And so we talked about them a long time ago at GDC, that his new company is a data company looking to, in a sense, rival what Newzoo is doing. So both have competing views of the industry that came out like within the same week. So it was very fun to kind of pair these things together. So I just want to give you a few highlights and Kress ask you a few questions about this. So on the 2024 total industry outlook, both of them are about the same, saying, between 186 and 187 billion for 2024. I think that Yoast also goes into 2025, well, as does Newzoo as well. So they're projecting that there's about like 4.5% to 5% year over year increase as we look into 2025. So both of them are predicting kind of growth in the market, which is great. Although I think I hear Phil calling from Sweden saying inflation, right? Like, are you accounting for inflation? And I don't know, man, but the good news is it looks like they are projecting growth. Yoast actually talks a little bit about VR, expecting to grow 11% in 2025, basically driven by the Meta hardware that's going on there. I think Kress is going to make fun of that in a moment, as will I. 11% off of a small base is mice nuts. Content is king, so software publishing remains the primary generator, of course. That's going to grow around 3.5%. Mobile continues to dominate, also growing. So let me get into some of the growth rates here, and compare and contrast between both of these reports. So both say that mobile growth is about the same, around 3% growth, which is probably around like inflation. PC is also, they say, up around 4% on both reports. The difference is that console, they are predicting a different growth rate. So Aldora or Yoast is up 3%. Newzoo says down 1%. So Kress, high level, what's going on here? What do you think?
I think both are very reasonable outlooks. I don't agree with Juice expectations around VR. I think VR is dead again. But maybe 11% on a small base makes more sense. But maybe you see something that I'm not seeing. But, Apple's entrant was a disaster. I think Facebook is losing its thing. And the focus of this shit is all gone. Everyone's focusing on AI. So they're not going to spend any more money on this bullshit, right? So it's like, I don't know what he's seeing that I'm not seeing on that. And then I think the only other criticism I would have is the console business. Even though he just has it growing, I would say that hardware with Switch 2 and GTA coming, hardware should have a good year next year. It's actually potentially for units to grow. Maybe revenue comes down because pricing comes down. How about this? I hope that hardware does better than he is forecasting, even though I know hope is not a method. I will say one thing about Yoast or Juiced or whatever.
Yoast.
Whatever. Yoast. Okay. He must have found an editor, dude. Like, his stuff is so freaking challenging to digest, with my small little brain. I have to filter this shit through ChatGPT, but the most succinct thing I've ever seen from this guy, right? And I think it's a great marketing tool to build his competitor to Newzoo. So really well done for him.
Oh, I 1,000% agree. I'm a fan of his newsletter. And then to see this report, And it's a free report. You can go to the website and download it. It's actually been covered a lot in Gaming Press. They take hit the first slide. So I'm going to be guest speaking at the USC Gaming School, which is local here for me because I'm in LA. And I went in and I'm, quote, borrowing a few of his slides to show the students like what a great market summary looks like. His first couple of slides just really nails like, how do you think about the market, what's going on at a high level? Because part of when I talk to them, it's like, how do you find blue ocean? How do you figure out and filter through what it is that you want to approach with your product? Like, what's product market fit and how do you get there? And so he's a professor at NYU, so I could see why some of this is great. And then from a business perspective, I think it's awesome. All right, a few collabs of the week. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I'm not a surprise for you guys because I'm a geek. Galaxy Quest. Do you remember Galaxy Quest? You remember that movie from like forever ago?
Oh, it was really funny. It was like a spoof, right? It was a little bit of a satire on Star Trek inspired type shows. Yeah. Movie.
Yeah. With Tim Allen.
Tim Allen. Yes.
Yeah. And Sigourney Weaver. So Galaxy Quest characters will appear in Star Trek Fleet Command. That's the Scopely game. So there's kind of an interesting campaign for a free avatar that's basically a way to introduce players to the web shop. I just wanted to call this out as brilliant. There's a lot of friction. We're showing an image that they have up and they've been promoting. There's like 4 steps you have to take to find a way to get this avatar and get into their web shop. And it's only for new players, which is kind of a little bit of an insult, I think, if you're an existing player. But, you know, I think it's a great idea as a way to, number one, get new players in and promote the web shop. So really interesting collaboration there. And then, Kress, I thought you would find this interesting, although you're deep in WoW. World of Warcraft has entered Diablo 4 with new cosmetic sets and a mount bundle in the cash shop. So does this give you any reason to go back to Diablo? Or no? Because you're deep in WoW.
Not really. Yeah. No. I actually do really want to try Diablo again, but no.
Well, didn't they time both of the major updates at the same time? So that feels like a little bit.
I don't know.
A little bit difficult.
I only can really be engaged in one of these things at a time. I'm so obsessed with it. So it's like
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's not healthy as it is. I don't want to add any more fuel to my obsessions.
Hear you. All right. So let me trigger you a little bit. We were just talking about VR, and as we move into the next section, which is investments in M&A, I don't know if this is a rumor or not, but I saw this article. Microsoft plans new mixed reality VR headset to rival Apple Vision Pro, may run Windows apps via the cloud.
What is going on? I mean, this Apple thing has been a disaster. Why would they even consider this? It doesn't even make sense. And Microsoft's been down this road. They had that piece of shit tech before they spent gajillions of dollars on.
HoloLens?
It's over. Just stop. Just stop it.
I hope they never give up. I'm still very optimistic on this. I've done a couple of things. Well, I did one thing I can't talk too much about, but there's some interesting hardware changes I feel like certain companies are making to make it feel more seamless without having 2 eyes that are a projection of your face on the front of the screen. Like, I feel like there's more than what we've seen in the current execution of these headsets, for sure. I'm hopeful.
Okay. Well, hope it's not a strategy, as Kress says.
Hope it's not a strategy.
Yeah. How much money did they spend on HoloLens? I mean, are they really going to go back against? I mean, Jesus Christ, the people forget, like
R&D's expensive.
Maybe the remainder of that team is hard at work at something else that's going to be not gaming related, something else like, I don't know, more productivity related. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. They should all go watch your talk, Jen, on finding product market fit. Maybe they just need a refresher.
Well, they're going to see that 11% up from Yoast and be like, look.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't like these reports suggesting that there's growth in industry which is almost dead, so it's like, so that's why I don't like those things. So
all right, moving on. I know, Kress, you might not be able to go too deep into this, but WB reported weighing the sale of the games division in the wake of an almost 70% decline in its stock price since Warner Brothers Discovery was formed in 2022. So this is the second time this decade, actually, that WB Games has been kind of up for a potential sale. back in 2000, Microsoft and Take-Two were interested in buying them. And at the time, the deal would have been around maybe like $4 billion, which is interesting that Scopely went for almost 5. So that's pretty funny. Obviously, the sale never happened. WB Games has stuck around and is its own entity. And Microsoft never fully took its eye off the Warner ball. Leaked documents from the 2023 merger, potential merger with Activision showed that it wanted Gotham Knights, Mortal Kombat 1, Suicide Squad, I bet they're glad they missed that one, on Game Pass for a range of 50 to 250 million each. So those were leaked documents. They're probably old, but I mean, it feels like they're always kind of up for sale and they're always up for licensing. I was kind of like, is this really news?
Isn't everyone always kind of up for sale?
Yeah, I mean, this is a long, drawn out story of which most of you I can't comment on. But from an investor perspective, I can say a few things. Like, there are some valuable assets here that would be worthwhile to own. The biggest challenge is without the ownership of the IP itself, it's far less valuable than you might think, right? So if you have to sign long-term licenses for MK, Mortal Kombat, DC, and Harry Potter, and then on top of that, you have game risk and, and dev risk, et cetera. Like, the value of this is far less than it would be otherwise if it was like wholly owned IP that could be transferred.
Yeah.
And then part of the reason it hasn't sold in the past is because the valuation expectations got out of hand in that time period. And a lot of the leadership at Warner doesn't know anything about video games, or they claim to know, but they really don't. So in my estimation, I bet the company's worth about the same, in the $3 to 4 billion range, maybe a bit lower, given some of the challenges that they're having. The biggest problem is that there's no more buyers, right?
Yeah.
I don't think EA and Take-Two are interested. Right? I don't think Microsoft can really bite off another multi-billion-dollar acquisition. There's Amazon, maybe Netflix, but Netflix may not be interested because the IP doesn't come with it, right? They want to own their IP as well on their platform.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It really only leaves Amazon. Oh, and the Chinese are out, right? Still, like, the Chinese can't make big acquisitions in the space. So I think they're great teams. I just don't think there's a lot of bidders out there anymore, and maybe they get sold piecemeal. I don't know, whatever.
Well, Krafton could maybe be interested. Oh, but they just bought Tango Gameworks and the Hi-Fi Rush IP from Xbox as part of a strategic agreement. And, they're a Korean company, right? So the firm said it's working with Xbox to enable a smooth transition so that the Tango team can continue developing the Hi-Fi Rush IP and explore future projects. I think they were working on Hi-Fi Rush 2, which is why they potentially were let go, is because that they were at the beginning of that next project, which is a lot easier to cut something at the beginning than later on. So thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, this is great news for Tango. I mean, much better outcome than what Microsoft, did to them. And it also further makes Microsoft look like an evil dictator. Why couldn't they get this done before they announced their closure, right? Like, why wouldn't they put this out there to see if anybody was interested, They put this team through hell, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost evil, right? And maybe there's lots of things going on behind the scenes that I don't know, but like on the surface and from a PR perspective, this is a fucking disaster, absolute disaster for Microsoft. But I think overall, great outcome for Tango, and I hope they can find the success at Krafton that was clearly not happening at Microsoft.
Yeah, I want to go back to something you mentioned about the Chinese, with the U.S. kind of putting through legislation to kind of force ByteDance to sell TikTok. Chinese ownership of U.S. companies is in question, if not, obviously impossible to do now, but also is in question of existing companies. And I was thinking about Riot, which is owned by Tencent, and also, well, Supercell doesn't matter because they're in Europe, right? Because this is a U.S. thing. Is there any concern about Tencent owning outright Riot? And they have a huge stake in Epic, although I think that's a little bit different now. So, Kress, I know I didn't like script this for us to talk about, but I don't know. I'm kind of wondering if Riot might be up for some sort of sale.
Oh, I mean, is there like regulatory concerns about
Correct.
Chinese ownership of Riot?
Yeah.
No, not specifically. I mean, it's always a possibility, but I think right now those type of investments are relatively safe, although they do collect information on customers.
Yeah, right?
But I think there's some degree of separation between those companies. I don't think they're going to get as much scrutiny as something like TikTok, which is
Propaganda.
causing lots of other issues. Yeah.
No.
So
for sure.
I've had these conversations. It's kind of complicated. I'm not going to really go into it right now. I think Riot's okay.
Okay.
How about that?
All right. Very good. All right. Let's talk a little bit about games, Laura.
Yeah, I had some puzzle games. So last week or the week before, we covered Time Blast, which was by a studio within Wildlife. They are a developer, I believe, out of Brazil. And they actually just launched another puzzle game called Secret Puzzle Society. It soft launched back in March. It's still very early. I was taking the numbers, played through the game a bit. It's this wave of there's been a match 3. What do you do with match 3? What do you combine it with? I mean, if you look at any type of puzzle game, it's been combined with a lot of different ideas. This is more of a match 3 meets mystery. I would comp this against a little bit Mystery Matters by Playtika or a bit of Small Town Murders by Rovio. It's, again, early days. I didn't want to pull the numbers too much on this because I think I'm like level 70. I have some early thoughts, but they still need to add more playbook, more live ops. But I think it's interesting. But what I like more about it is that Wildlife, they are going for puzzle. And I love that. They are experimenting with Time Blast. They were doing some experimentation with what does the next wave of the Match 3 engine look like. Now, this is a little bit more of a meta play, but I'm happy to see people have not given up on puzzle. Yes, it's hard, but I think there's still a ton of opportunity if you're willing to take some risks, and I like companies that take risk. All right, so Harry Potter Hogwarts Mystery, another mystery game. It's a theme. It works well to get lower CPIs. People like mystery. Racks up $500 million in revenue. This game's been around for a while, actually. I remember playing it a while ago. It's mission-driven point-and-click adventure with a Harry Potter theme, more RPG action-esque, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yeah. This is from Jam City, and it's one of their biggest games. It's actually their most downloaded game for the first half of 2024. I do love that, the reason why I put this in here, a couple things is, again, from a PR perspective, I love that we're seeing more milestone PR that's getting covered, right? So either revenue numbers, although I think we'll all kind of make fun of the pre-reg numbers since some of those aren't actually converting into the actual downloads when you launch. But it's nice to see that these things get picked up, and it's nice to see games that have been out for a really long time. Jam City's got a bunch of these. We talked about Cookie Jam still being out, 10 years later. And who would have thought that mobile games that back in the day when, we all started on this, it's like, it'll be around for a couple of years. And like many of these games are around for 10 plus now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And then I want to talk a little alliteration. We have Playtika's Plan and Claire's Chronicles. So we did cover this, but way back when, 18 months ago, Playtika was talking about pivoting their strategy, moving away from new games. It was too difficult. The landscape was uncertain, and they want to focus more on M&A. It seems like, and I think this is good news, there's been a change to that strategy as they're going to be targeting a launch of Claire's Chronicles in Q2 2025. I think this is a good move. Wooga has established itself as the leaders in the hidden object space. They still are with June's Journey. Before June's Journey, they had Pearl's Peril. I assume Claire's Chronicles is a hidden object game. There's not much about it so far, but I'd assume by the title, since it's now, Claire Chronicle, June Journey, Pearl Peril, assuming it's a hidden object game. I'm curious to see what they do. There's a lot of opportunity in hidden object because June's Journey has been out, 2000, I don't remember exactly. I think it's like 2018-ish. It's been out for a while. Still number one. There's been some experimentation on how to integrate hidden object with match 3. That's what Manor Matters by Playtika was trying to do. They were trying to find ways to make it more level based as opposed to kind of just finding a scene. How do you make these scenes that are kind of expensive to make replayable? I'd love to see how they're going to combine things. I think Mystery Matters, Manor Matters, Mystery, all these Matter games by Playtika, we're trying to figure out different ways to incorporate hidden object maybe with something else. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm definitely going to sit down and play when it comes out.
So the other takeaway I have is you have to have alliteration in the title of your name.
Yep.
Claire Chronicle, 2 C's. So the other thing I think you brought that up, Playtika and not launching new games. And we covered this a little bit last week. I think Singular had a report out, and there's a lot of kind of marketing companies having reports out around UA is bouncing back a bit. Maybe not on both platforms. I think I covered that CPIs were going down a little bit on Android, up a little bit on iOS. But I think especially what's going on at AppLovin and Axon 2, I think there's starting to be a little bit in AI, ironically. This is a place where AI is really benefiting people, is that acquisition and the cost of acquisition and the ability to find good players is getting better. I don't think it's pre-ATT levels, but it is better than it was. So that might be another kind of reason of Playtika changing strategy and deciding to launch. Okay, so Bungie, I know we talked a little bit about this last week, just a quick recap. So Bungie sadly laid off 100 people out of the 1,200. The CEO came out online and said, sadly that they kind of overestimated and overspent and overhired for the execution that was, coming out. Sony has decided to take over some of the people from Bungie. So many teams and folks are actually getting absorbed into Sony. They had actually another project in development that is going to get absorbed into Sony or another team. So I think what's left is Marathon and, the rest of Destiny. So, obviously this is kind of a hit on culture and a hit on morale. We haven't had a chance for Kress to weigh in, and I know that you have a lot of thoughts, so I'll hand it to you.
I'm really kind of torn on this because I can really see both sides. And we actually talked about this on the podcast before. I was like, this acquisition made no sense at the time. It was way too rich for what Bungie was. And then the stated expectations were out of control in terms of what they were expecting Bungie to accomplish within an organization like Sony, right? So from the Sony perspective, like they were acquired for $3.6 billion. So expectations high, in terms of what you're going to do and perform. And not only were they responsible for their own games, they were responsible for the entire software as a service strategy at Sony. And then we know that Destiny's expansion was delayed and performed well below expectations. Marathon has been delayed a few times, and their mobile game never came to fruition. So, Bungie took a shit ton of money and didn't perform, right? And so this is what happens, right? I'm not to be too straightforward about it, but and then on the flip side, Bungie is super fiercely independent. They want to do their own thing, I don't think they ever really were capable of managing live service games at Sony. It was kind of never a fit from the start. They wanted to build their own creative things. It is clear that the cultures are quite a bit different than Sony. That was always the case. And, Sony obviously forced layoffs at the studio, which did not help morale at all. And then on top of it, Jim Ryan, who is the biggest executive champion, basically got replaced by Hiroki-san, I think, who is like a total beat counter. So it's a shitty situation all in, right? But this is the third time Bungie is going through this. I mean, this happened at Microsoft and happened at Activision. So it's there's clearly some kind of disconnect between what expectations are set and what expectations are met during these type of transactions, because they were certainly late and delayed at Activision as well. So I don't know. I hate to be doom and gloom here, but I've said this a few times in the podcast, the minute Sony people started to take over at Bungie, and now we're basically seeing a huge integration of that. It's really sad to say. I absolutely love their games. I think the team really needs to stay independent to do its best work. And frankly, they just seem to be never belong at a big company like Microsoft or partners with Activision or as a part of Sony, So it's a little bit shocking that they made the same mistake 3 times. And, obviously they all got paid though, and so, maybe they'll go off and build something on their own again. I don't know.
Yeah,
it seems kind of over.
We talked about this before in reference to EA, when EA buys teams, that you really have to think about how do these things come together? What's the 1 + 1 = 3? What's the chocolate and peanut butter of, if you're going to buy someone and absorb them, is it a culture fit? What are you really going to have them do? And in this case, ever since I've been on the podcast, we were like, why on earth would you bring in Bungie and then assign them to do basically the live service infrastructure for Sony? Is that the root cause? Did that take their eye off the ball of Destiny and Marathon and all of these other things or not? I don't know anything to speculate, but when you have kind of competing strategic directions, I think that can really pull people and take their eye off the ball. So if you're going to go acquire someone, you really got to be clear of like, is this the right fit? And what do we envision the output of this thing going to be? And because you can't have your cake and eat it too. I'm going to keep going with analogies on this.
There's nothing worse than being acquired for something great that you've made and then not being able to make it again, or being told to do X, Y, and Z when you've been doing something else that's been working. And I'm not saying this is what happened with Bungie, but with the acquisition and culture fit, 100%, there's a reason you're buying them. Let them do that thing they're great at. Don't put them in a corner and be like, do this.
I'm going to go back to the valuation thing. Like, they were not worth 3.6 billion to keep doing what they're doing. You know,
correct. Yeah.
Destiny
fair.
2 is a successful game, but it's not that successful, you know? Like, it could be a lot better, you know, than what they're doing. It certainly hasn't performed well as of late. So, you know, they didn't even execute against what they're good at, right? And they certainly did not justify the valuation that they were given based on the expectations from Sony.
Yeah, you said 3.6. I mean, we just talked about the Warner valuation was 4, Scopely was 4.9 or something like that. And I know that Bungie's acquisition happened in a very different world and many years ago, but I think that just goes to show that valuations are maybe hopefully right sizing a little bit in this day and age with where we are. And yeah, that was probably just everyone was, you know, as Scott Galloway likes to say, champagne and cocaine, like just really lit like, woo, I'm going to throw money at Bungie.
Step into the future of game monetization with Xsolla, the premier partner for game developers seeking to expand their reach and revenue. Xsolla provides a robust suite of tools designed to enhance user acquisition, manage subscriptions, and streamline payment solutions worldwide. Unlock new markets and maximize profitability through their customized, secure payment architecture and dedicated support team. Xsolla, powering game developers to achieve global success.
This podcast is brought to you by AppsFlyer. In today's digital world, understanding your app's journey from discovery to download is more than just insightful, it's essential. Enter AppsFlyer, the leader in mobile attribution and marketing analytics that allows you to measure the full potential of your marketing efforts, making every ad dollar work smarter. With AppsFlyer, that's your new reality. Dive deep into data-driven insights that reveal exactly where your users come from and how they'll interact with your app. AppsFlyer, where your app's potential meets performance. Talking about throwing money at things, Nexon earnings. Okay, so I just wanted to cover this because of Dungeon and Fighter. So Nexon's Q2 revenue exceeded expectations by 30% year over year. Net income was also up 63%, and the growth was driven by Dungeon and Fighter, MapleStory, and FC. I was like, wait, EA FC? So altogether, that saw a 57% year-over-year increase. So Dungeon and Fighter doubled its franchise revenues year-over-year by expanding to mobile in China. So we know that I think it's overtaken everything and is now the #1 game in China. I think it's the fastest to 500 million was a stat that I saw in China. MapleStory, we were talking about earlier about games that have been around forever. That grew 9% with regional expansions. And then FC Online and FC Mobile exceeded expectations despite FC Online's revenue dip. So I didn't actually know this, but Nexon distributes or publishes EAFC in Japan and Korea, and Tencent takes China from them. So it makes me think a little bit more about why folks might want to consider working with a local publisher in some Asian markets, especially like Japan and Korea. Obviously, you know, for China, that's a whole different topic and a whole different choice. But as someone who, and I had to launch some games in Japan and Korea, I can tell you it's extremely difficult as a Western publisher to do that successfully. And, you know, would many companies just benefit by handing that over to somebody like a Nexon or somebody in Japan? Anyway, I just was thinking about that. But Kress, anything that I missed from Nexon?
I've been really bullish on Nexon because of Dungeon and Fighter. It's a game that's really, really successful on PC for years. I mean, years and years and years. And they just have been on the sidelines, not getting approved and not getting to market on mobile, which is obviously a much bigger market in China. So yeah, I've been really bullish on it. Unfortunately, they gave really absolute tepid guidance for next quarter, which just fucking crushed the stock. So I'm hoping that it's very conservative and they're just going to blow it away, because if it has any longevity the way the PC SKU had, then this thing is going to be a home run for years, right? Because that game has never died in China on PC. So I'm still very, very bullish on the company, and hopefully they just gave kind of like conservative guidance.
Makes sense. All right. So our next earnings is Take-Two, and there's a lot in here. So they have a lot about Zynga and how their new games are performing. They even touched on UGC a little bit in a lot of the different news stories. So let me just do a recap. So first, we already shit on Transmedia of the Week, which is the Borderlands movie. So just as a catch up, the Metacritic score was 27 and the user score was a 2.8 out of 10, which is yikes. Usually I always look at the consumer score more than the critics, because I feel like I vibe more with that. And even fans thought it sucked. So oops. They got their ass handed to them at the box office. The Ryan Reynolds family kicked their ass. So Deadpool was obviously number one. And then Ryan Reynolds' wife, Blake Lively, was in a film. And so both their movies were above Borderlands. And it pulled in 16 million globally for the weekend. I think it was like 8 or 9 in the US. So under 10 here. That is like truly an atomic bomb disaster. Just awful. I, again, firmly believe that building franchises are important, and this one is a huge swing and a miss. So anyway, all right, I'm going to keep going. The thing that we all care about the most, honestly, is GTA 6. They came out and said that it appears to still be on track for fall 2025. We all know that they can change that at any point in time, but I think for their own messaging, that's what they want to say right now. The Take-Two Interactive Software posted higher quarterly revenue for a wider loss, attributing the latter to heavy spending on marketing of new games. So remember, I just also wanted to, sometimes I forget everyone that they own. So they have Rockstar, which is GTA, 2K, which is NBA, WWE, and 2K actually has a ton of mobile titles too. And then Zynga, which is all mobile. And so the results mostly came in ahead of expectations. Shares were up around 4% in recent early trading. And then, so here's something I wanted to get your thoughts on. They asked the CEO, Strauss, about UGC. And UGC, we see that obviously in Roblox, we see that in UEFN. How is that going to come to fruition in terms of the GTA franchise? It's interesting because GTA modding has probably helped the franchise stay alive over the last, I think it's 10 or it's going to be 12 years in between the games. But he came out and said that UGC doesn't appear to be a major factor in the company's future. Is that a miss for them? Like, what do you think?
I've been actually trying to understand what the opportunity here is in this market. So I've been having some calls on this. And I had a great call yesterday with a clear bull in the space on UEFN as well as Roblox. And, I think the guy on the phone that I talked to yesterday would argue this is where Gen Z is. Like, they're on these UGC platforms. Yeah. Their expectations are set of their entertainment being delivered, like Roblox and Fortnite, where, a heavy social layer and, get in, get out, these type of interactions, that sort of thing. And even though, Gen X and Gen Y have tons of existential incomes and spending insane amounts of money on games, they're a dying breed and you need to embrace the future. I think that's kind of how you would argue it. Yeah. But I think I'm with Strauss. I'm Gen X to my death, right? It doesn't really make sense to bring his franchises to other platforms because his biggest franchises are platforms, right? GTA and NBA 2K are fucking juggernauts, right? So it's like, why would you want to bring those experiences to other platforms? It doesn't even make sense. And to some degree, despite, Tim's, benevolence, UEFN seems to be a platform to build out Epic's business. I'm not really sure if it makes sense outside of the smaller indies to, build on for big software as a service companies like EA or Take-Two or whatever to bring their big franchises or platforms to support Epic's platform. I don't know if it makes sense, even though that's where that audience is. I still think that young audience that is interacting with UGC are evolving and moving on towards, AAA. I think we'll still see that. So I don't think Strauss was suggesting not to allow UGC on GTA. Actually, he says, obviously we're excited about what we see in the modding community for GTA. That's pretty exciting. I mean, that's his quote. So I don't think he's talking about not allowing UGC on GTA. I think he's just talking about being part of other platforms, UGC platforms. So I think what he's kind of saying is that the whole industry is not going to turn into some kind of UGC playground, right? It's not going to be a UGC driven industry, that customers are looking for the best entertainment experiences. And that is what Take-Two is going to provide them. And that's not what they're going to find on these UGC platforms, I think he would argue.
So no UEGTAFN. I'm just kidding.
No.
No, but it's interesting. I mean, he could have the next platform. Like, he could be the next Fortnite or the next Roblox if they develop better modding tools and they develop more ways for people to come into the GTA universe and allow for better customization and better modding. Is that the next platform? I think he could have the next platform because so many people want to go into that world, and it's the naughty wish fulfillment platform that you can be anything and do anything naughty, because you can't do that in Roblox. And could it be the rated R version of Roblox and Fortnite? That
GTA.
That's a great idea. We should go pitch that. You are the rated R version in the next, UGC platform. We let you do and mod all of these crazy things. Anyway.
I've been having these like battles on the internet, on LinkedIn, just taking pot shots on LinkedIn about this bullshit about giving up. Oh, yeah, I didn't even talk about this yet. A16Z had some fucking nonsensical article about like the biggest IPs in gaming in the world. And that, when are they going to open up their IP so that anybody can build out games based upon their IPs, or, just open up their IP, right? And which made no fucking sense, because in the context of what the article was saying was that these are the biggest IPs in the world and they all have been protected for decades, in order to build it that way. So why in the fuck are they going to open it up to anybody to use, right? And so in the same way, I still think that allowing people to change the type of experiences that you have in a amazing platform like GTA or NBA 2K just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. People like the curated aspect of what that experience is. They don't want a bunch of yahoos building different content for that. That doesn't fit the franchise or the IP,
Obviously not 2K, NBA 2K, but you don't think that, I think that fits in GTA. I mean, GTA is about being your most awful self. And I don't know, I think of all of the things, that one feels like it could work.
Yeah. And you could do that by creating crazy content from the company that makes that sense. But if you open up the ability for them to create whatever they want in this world, I think that breaks the whole fiction of the world itself, right? Like, that's not what they want. They want to be immersed in the experience that is GTA, that is curated by the GTA developers. I'm just talking out of my ass right now, but like, I don't think they want like a 1,000-foot dildo wandering around like, downtown LA. Like, you don't think that kind of breaks the whole thing? Like, if you're able to create where the fuck you want,
Should you be protecting the brand guidelines, Jen? Isn't that like part of being in brand marketing, is understanding like, this is how the story should be told versus not. Otherwise, we're going to have like walking dildos in LA.
Which is GTA. Have you got like that? So that is the brand guidelines is you can be the craziest thing ever. And especially if you were to construct it in a way where there are worlds, like you enter portals and, there's the main world, but these are offshoots that you could go into that are crafted by, creators. The rated R version of that, or the rated X version in many cases, since we're talking about a walking dildo. Time to penis, everybody. We're 57 minutes in and we finally got to TTP. I don't know. I think this is the perfect brand fit for this kind of thing. Anyway, hear you on that, but I want to give you time, Laura, to dig into Zynga. And I know you did a lot of homework, so take us through what's going on with Zynga.
Homework's a generous term. I got curious, and then all of a sudden I was like, where did my 3 hours go? How did this happen? Okay, so I think from this is the beginning bit is from the report itself, right? So more marketing spending for the recent new several mobile titles from Zynga. As we know, Zynga has a lot of games. Like, I think that should be established early on. And when we were talking about M&A earlier, what Take-Two owns, 2K and Zynga, like, then Zynga owns a lot of stuff. They had a ton of M&A throughout the years. And I actually went through Sensor Tower, categorized all of their games by their sub-developer and then by genre, and then did a revenue report to see did they get their bang for their buck. But they've bought Peak, they've bought Small Giant Games, Natural Motion, Graham, Social Point, and Rollick. I mean, they have a massive portfolio. Just to give you an idea of how big this rabbit hole was, I think Jen's question was, when we talked about Match Factory early, we were rather divided about whether or not we thought it'd be successful. And I thought it was a very good move when it came out. It was experimenting. Yeah, it was experimenting on a simple way to test a mechanic that's already been tested before in other games. So they weren't first to the 3D matching, which is what Match Factory is, timed 3D matching, but they were adding. They kind of took the same approach as what Spike did for tile matching, is they started adding more elements to it that we know work in puzzle games. So I think that's how they started to carve themselves out, and they're seeing pretty good success from it.
Yeah, I think Zynga's Match Factory, which grew 50% in terms of bookings over last quarter, while Toon Blast has continued to grow.
Show this. Hold on. Okay, so you have this, and then I went through, and I was like, where's all this money coming from? So you can see in this little pivot table I made, I took all the Zynga games, and I would say this is like 95% accurate because this is a manual exercise. So they had like 200 games. So instead of going through each row and checking each game specifically to make sure I got the genre right, I took a little bit of liberty here. But you can see in 2023, Blast was probably their leading category, and 3D Match, which is basically Match Factory, was not so revenue heavy. And that's kind of flipped on its head. Like Match Factory and the other games they've done in that category are doing really well. Blast, we know, has declined. I mean, it's mostly from Toy and Toon Blast. Toon Blast is having a little bit of a resurgence now. I didn't capture that, but they are, with the Super Light Ball and the different offers and everything they're throwing in with the live ops, it's definitely making a comeback. You can see Merge has decreased. That's mostly from Merge Dragons, Merge Magic, the other Merge games. But then when I thought, I got a little lazy, I just kind of classified almost everything that Rollick has made into hybrid, just because they were too, I didn't want to slice this any finer, but you can see like they're actually doing really well. Every time I looked at a chart from Zynga and I saw something, kind of all the other games classified into other revenue buckets. So in Sensor Tower, they had all the big games. And then the other category was massive. And I was like, why? And it's a lot of these smaller games that are actually doing quite well. Let me see what health I have. Oh, this is me rabbit holing. I just broke it down, the estimated revenue by the developer. Yeah, year to date, 100%. I was more curious to look at how the actual developers were performing and then how the categories were performing.
All that's happening is that Peak is doing well. The rest of the business is shit. Okay, let's just be honest, right?
I disagree with that.
The rest of the business is absolute crap, right? Peak is killing it. Fucking Star Wars Hunters is a disaster. Like everything is down except for fucking Peak, which is doing Match Factory and blowing it out of the box with Toon Blast or whatever. They're reinvesting in Toon Blast. Like,
Literally,
that's what's happening.
that is definitely not true. Rollick, their revenue, it's not even a full year. Their revenue has increased. Their share of the pie has increased from last year. Listen, I'm like one of the first people like, those games, I don't know. But I actually think they're going about it in the right way. They're testing a lot of stuff. Twisted Tangle's doing well. They have something, I think there's like Bus Jam and Screw Jam. Everyone's getting ads for it and people are playing it and they're getting smarter with how they're doing ad strategies. I disagree. I think Rollick is adding a lot more to me, they were doing a little bit under the radar. Maybe some of the others, like, let's see. I'll pull this chart again. I'll submit it for y'all at the end of 2024 and then we can do a proper Zynga comparison.
Just look at, I wish you had your year to date by developer would be really interesting.
All right.
And you'll see like how bad it is outside of of what's going on with Peak.
So Star Wars Hunters, I was curious. They did like 2.5 million downloads. It's like 1.5 million in revenue. The game was in development for 7 years, 5 years, 7 years. Could you have a bigger turd with a Star Wars IP?
I mean, I just like a broken record thing. Like, that is this dumb fucking game, right? I've said this from the very beginning. It's a stupid idea. It doesn't make any sense. That's not how you make money in mobile. This is like the fever dream of like a Blizzard game, or like, you know, any of these like highfalutin like AAA developers trying to get into mobile. It just doesn't make sense, you know, like cosmetic economies with this bullshit, you know. I don't know.
Kind of reminds me of what's going on with Call of Duty Warzone, where you have a bet on a major IP and a bunch of developers who've never really made a game in a genre on mobile. And I mean, that thing's also in rough shape as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. The fact that it was like kind of tying into the overall ecosystem, and I haven't been following it too closely. I thought it was going to do a little bit better than this, but I think that game is almost a bigger disaster from the perspective, because the expectations were so fucking high, and I bet they spent about the equal amount of like insane amounts of money on building these nonsense, right? Like, I'm sorry for the Star Wars Hunters guys. I mean, those guys, that team is actually really good. The hell, that game is not a bad PC game, you know, like potentially.
Yeah.
But it's just not a mobile game.
It's just not a mobile game. I think the challenge with these things is that, same thing with Warzone, it's so difficult. You know, maybe at the end of the year we do like, what was the biggest turd? Like, or the biggest like game that had the highest expectations and missed the most, because those are just two games in my mind recently that feel like they have a great IP, but have just absolutely, we should follow up on Warzone.
How about this?
Yeah.
I want to be clarified. I think part of the reason that I don't think Star Wars Hunters is as bad as Warzone is because I think expectations were really low for Star Wars Hunters from the get-go.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So it's like, I think people's expectations were for that Warzone would be a lot better, a lot bigger than it is, but in terms of the overall investment and time and energy and money, I think they're kind of equally bad.
Interesting. Okay.
God damn it, Hunters! That's crazy.
Right? Did you
You
just
only
pull it
got
up?
3? Yeah, on an action game in Star Wars, you only got 3.2 million downloads. I mean, how is that even possible? You should get multiple tens of millions of downloads, even though the revenue is never going to be there because it's a terribly designed game from that perspective. Like, you should at least get the goddamn downloads. Where's the marketing department? What the fuck are they doing?
Well, I think you're right. However, what I will say is that the marketing department didn't have anything to work with. So what I said, you know, I think I've told many of you, I've worked on Star Wars my entire career. I was making Star Wars toys since 1996, sadly. I know that dates me. So I know this IP probably inside and out. There were no iconic characters used. All of the characters are completely made up. And so in any of the marketing material, you have no identifiable Star Wars characters. So you don't see anyone and you're like, oh, I get it. I get the aspiration of wanting to play one of these characters that I know and love. Now, even in like Jedi Survivor or the EA games or Battlefront or all these other, you have iconic vehicles and characters and lights and weapons that you're like, I get to go into the universe and interact in the universe that I know and love. And this game didn't do that from the beginning. They also had very weird marketing, which was like a game show. It was like, you're going to come to the Star Wars arena and fight and battle. And it's like, whoa, this has no basis of reality in the IP. And so, again, like, I think we say this all the time. Ethan may have started it. You have to deliver on the core fantasy of the IP. And it's not to, like, I want to go in and have a battle arena experience with the Star Wars brand. Like, it's just not a fit. So I think they had a product marketing complete miss from the beginning, if I were to give my thoughts.
Yeah.
All right,
guys. Well, I must go. It's good to see you guys.
Good to see you as well. All right. See you next week. You're in for a while, right? No more travel for you, or you're in for a few weeks?
Oh, yeah. Fucking done.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely done.
Okay. Excellent. And I think Adam Telfer joins us next week. So it'll be fun. My first time.
All right.
All right. See you, Adam.
Later.
Bye.
You did it. You made it to the end of the episode. As a fan of the show, it would help us out if you subscribe and leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. More importantly, are you a member of the Deconstructor of Fun Slack group? If you have 5 years or more of games industry experience, go to deconstructoroffun.com/Slack and apply to join. Join the games industry's best professional community filled with peers always willing to lend a hand. Or subscribe to our newsletter to get all the latest insights from the Deconstructor of Fun content creators. Thanks for listening.